Hello and welcome to the Surgical Spirit podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Haidar Al-hakim, the Third Eye Doctor. Pull up a chair and get ready for some candid and uncompromising discussion with experts, innovators, agitators, and influential people from every corner of health and well-being. From inside the hospital to at home in the kitchen, we're leaving no stone unturned in our quest to uncover the secrets of healthier, happier, more successful, and less stressful lives. Thank you so much for joining us, and without further ado, let's meet this episode's guest. Hello, Sarah. How are you today?
I'm really well, thank you.
Well, I mean, I've literally spent the last 40 to 50 minutes trying to organize this, technical, perfection, which hopefully it'll work. And people are listening to us. And, I must be honest with you. I haven't done a podcast for about 6 months, and I've literally left it. And I thought I could just walk back into it, as if, nothing's changed over the last 6 months.
Yeah.
So I've paid the price. And, that happens to us sometimes. We think, yeah, that's fine. I'll just walk into it like before. A bit like careers. Walk back into our careers.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's a nice reminder that you can also, even if you do plan, sometimes there are things beyond your control, aren't there?
Yeah. I mean, internet is a bit of an issue these days because literally everyone's on the internet now. And we have, I have 3 kids who are literally being educated over the internet. And it's taken over our lives now, the internet.
It's certainly become a tool that we became very reliant on, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I think for better or worse. Yeah, I've got a couple of kids and one of them uses it really responsibly and the other one has a slightly more addictive relationship with it. And I think that resonates with me, is how do you have that, get the benefits without then it becoming something that you rely on or become very addicted to.
Yeah. I mean, it's very easy, addictions are very easy these days. And, it's just so easy to sort of get into it. And for a lot of people, that's the only way to de-stress, is to get into addictions.
Well, also the dopamine hit, isn't it, that you get through social media. And at the moment, we're not having the opportunity to connect with people face to face. So you're not getting the same feedback. And even when you're having these remote meetings, and we're all having a lot of them at the moment, I think if I had stocks in Zoom, I'd be a very rich woman right now. You're relying on that for your human contact for a lot of people, but it doesn't have the same quality, and it's definitely more tiring, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't have that evolutionary quality which we've all developed over millions of years. And for us to, kind of expect us to adapt to it within months and years, that's it just doesn't make sense whatsoever. And pushing this artificial intelligence agenda, just to cope with the current situation, I don't think is the answer, to be honest.
No, I think it's very different. We're making do, aren't we? We're making do. We're trying to make the best of it. And it's one of the ways of connecting with people. I've started writing letters recently. And even though I'm not seeing that person's face, me writing down the words and sending a physical thing to them feels like a much more profound form of connection than face to face.
Why did you start writing?
It was partly, why did I start? It was initially because at the beginning of lockdown, somebody in my family died and I wanted to do a proper condolence letter. And I just remember sitting there and I went upstairs and like a cat, I found a patch of sunshine and I sat on the carpet and I spent 45 minutes writing a proper handwritten letter. And actually it felt amazing doing it because I really thought about what I wrote. I put some very special memories into it. I put a lot of love into it. And it felt really good sending it because I knew the joy that would be had, or how appreciated it would be. And it was definitely appreciated. What I wrote was read out at my great aunt's funeral. And I just think it's a deeper level of connection. And so that gave me this feedback. And I go, yeah, I'd like to do that again. I'd like to do more of that, because whenever I have received something, it means so much to me, and I'll put it on the mantelpiece, or I'll keep it in a special box of letters. They seem far more human, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, it's a skill that's been passed down from generation to generation.
It was absolutely inculcated. My father was a journalist and wrote beautifully and very wittily. And my mother was a teacher. So it was absolutely one of the life skills that we were expected to have. And we now write very good thank you letters and Christmas cards. You know, I don't consider it a proper Christmas card unless you put a bit of information, you ask a question, something that's trying to encourage further interaction. You know, it's more than just, here's a piece of paper, I thought of you, send. And I get a bit grumpy about it if I get one back, dear so-and-so, love so-and-so. I'm like, you might as well have sent a text. At least ask me a question or write something, you know, just how you have that deeper level of, to let them know that they're properly thinking of me rather than just a task to tick off. And yeah, I take pleasure in doing that, definitely.
Yeah. What kind of teacher was she, your mum?
My mum was a maths teacher, but also a headmistress of a school. And so there were lots of sort of life lessons in that. Yeah, I'm the only doctor in the family. So I've got a really interesting set of family. And my sister was in marketing, but now curates beautiful art to sell to people. It's really interesting.
And it's quite interesting, the dynamic, for me anyway, with you and your mum. What was that like growing up with a mum who happens to be a headmistress? What was she like?
Oh, she was super chilled, actually.
Yeah.
And she wasn't my headmistress, thankfully. I went to a different school, but it was actually great kudos, because I knew some of the kids at her school. I would hang out with them. I would go on the school trips, and she was the cool teacher that everybody liked. So it was lovely seeing her in that context. And then it was a bit of a shock when I went back a few years later and she was the head, and suddenly she was all business. And I sort of looked at her in this new light going, oh, I didn't know you had this strict side to you. It was, you know, my cuddly, very vivacious, fun-loving mummy was this real role of responsibility, and I was very proud of her. But I'd always seen the very human aspect. So to see the kind of the position of responsibility, the public speaker, the person responsible for sailing a ship, for which she still has tremendous pride. She really believed in it. It was a fantastic role model to have.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And did you kind of, let's say your kind of mindset changed as you grew, you know, through your years? Did that change in any way, or was it pretty consistent in terms of her being your role model?
Yeah, it was interesting because she and I both always loved maths, so we had that in common. And we've always been quite a similar type of person. So part of me thought, yeah, I'll definitely end up like her, because that would be a really good thing. But I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. But we're still very close now and see things in a similar way. But I think I could see, as I became an adult and then a mother, and that definitely gave me a different insight also into the pressures that it put on her. And I think she's quite open about the fact that the job took more and more from her over time as the responsibility took on. And she was quite open about the fact that the further, a bit like us in medicine, the further you go up the chain, the experience, you then become management. You are then slightly distanced from people in your team, because you have to be the leader and sometimes make unpopular decisions and you can't please everybody, and how that can feel quite distanced and the responsibility, but also the fact that you're not doing the stuff that you really went into it for, which is the love of teaching, the love of learning, the love of being with pupils. And I definitely see parallels with that in medicine, and other people in different areas of responsibility who end up being promoted or see that the natural next step is, okay, I know how to do it really well, so now I'm going to manage it. And actually we come into it with almost no experience of how to manage, and not necessarily an interest or business skills.
I mean, we take these interests on board, so to speak. You know, it kind of just falls in our laps and then we just get on with it.
When I went to, thought I'd been a locum for a while, I applied to be a partner because that's what you do when you're a GP. That's the pinnacle of being a GP. I'll be a partner and then everyone will be impressed by me and I'll look important. I'll be fulfilling my destiny. And I thought, I know absolutely nothing about management or business. And so I did the sort of classic medic thing. I will go and do a qualification. So I went to Warwick University. I did a master's level module in business. And I genuinely don't think it made any difference whatsoever. I'm pretty sure my partners weren't impressed by it. But somehow I felt that I needed that to sort of be worthy of that next role, and it didn't make a blind bit of difference. But
why do you say it didn't make any difference? What exactly happened?
I think it's a very, when you go to university and you do these qualifications, they're often very theoretical. And I think it was talking about things like, all the flows in a business, how to be lean. And actually, when you're a partner, what you're actually talking about is, okay, what's the latest thing that we've been thrown to jump through by the government or to get the funding? It's far more mundane and day to day. Do I want to take on responsibility for this enhanced service, which will pay me a bit more, but will take 3 sessions worth of doctor time every 6 months, and dealing with staff or a boiler breaking down? It's actually bums on seats, and how do you manage that? Far more than I thought it would be the actual, how do we make this business as efficient as possible? And I don't know how practice managers do it. I'm absolutely in awe of practice managers. I think it must be the hardest job ever, because you're having to deal with everything, plus possibly a group of people who may or may not function well as a team, depending on the group. I think that's a very difficult role.
Yeah. I mean, people management is not for everyone. I mean, it's many roles in one role. That's the thing. And but for some people, they have the knack, they have the ability to do it. And I don't know what it is about them.
I found the dilemma between thinking, these are people that I want to spend time with. I love going out with and having fun on a night out and getting a bit silly and having a laugh. But then I might be the person they come to looking for a raise. Or I might be asking them to come in and run the flu clinics, and we'll be negotiating what that looks like, or who's here on Christmas Eve and who isn't. I found that dynamic difficult, because I wanted to be liked by everybody and be everyone's friend. But then I knew that I needed to be part of making those decisions. And I think the concept of morale within a business is very difficult. Sometimes you'd have people saying, oh yeah, well, morale is low at the moment. And you think, oh, well, my morale isn't great. What do we do about that? I think hats off to the people who are thriving as partners, running businesses, running organizations, being clinical managers, being medical directors, because I found that tremendously difficult, and also not an area that I particularly enjoyed. The bits I loved were the bits where you did decide, do we take on this piece of work strategically? Does that make sense? What's the best way of getting to see patients? How do we want our business to work? I really enjoyed those and sort of bouncing that about, but it was really difficult finding the time, and you're doing that on top of these incredibly long days, really difficult, demand going up and up and up. And just the level of energy that you need for that, I think is tremendously difficult.
Yeah. And, plus you've got the family side as well, which, as you talked about earlier, that literally gets neglected as a default, because you're so busy.
I came home in tears the first couple of weeks I was a partner, because my children were something like 2 and 4. And so by the time I got home, they were both in bed, and I'd left before they'd woken up. So I had these days where I didn't see them at all. And it was a huge shock to the system. And I hadn't really anticipated that, even though I'd done the job as a maternity locum. It's not the same, is it? You don't anticipate all the emails that you have to go through and make a decision on, that when you have these partners meetings that actually you enjoy, that's an hour that adds on to the end of your day for doing your admin. And yeah, I definitely found that adjustment difficult, even though I was a job share partner and could, leave work behind in theory when I left work.
Yeah. And when did you come to the realization that it was okay for people to resent you and not like you in your work?
Did I come to that realization? Yeah, no, I think I did gradually. I think there was that. It's a bit of growing up, isn't it? It's a bit like with patients and family and friends, the having boundaries and how important that is, that actually it's okay for me to have boundaries that work for me.
Yeah.
And that actually, if I give out too much, I'm just a husk of a person, there's nothing left, and I start becoming bitter and twisted and inefficient. Yeah, I think I grew up a bit as a partner, and probably as a grown-up, when you were asking about medical questions at the school gate from other mums, and just giving myself permission to put boundaries in. But yeah, it didn't come easily to me, certainly. That wanting to be needing to be needed and liking to be liked, I think, is quite a pervasive feeling, certainly for me. I think others maybe find it easier, but I think in terms of making business decisions, I think I got more used to that.
Yeah.
But I think as I gradually burnt out as a partner, I think I found it easier to make dispassionate decisions, but not necessarily ones with a lot of heart to them. So
there wasn't one story that really sort of brought you to the forefront that I've got to think about myself first before anything else?
Yeah, I mean, though it was one of my very dear colleagues, unfortunately, died one summer after a very short period of illness, and she was in her 40s. She was really the heart of the practice, very well regarded by everybody. And then another colleague was off also having treatment for an illness. And then both of our nurses left because they weren't happy with certain discussions with the partners and they wanted to go elsewhere. So we went from being 5 partners down to 3, and went from having a nursing team of, replete, to really being a skeleton staff. And that was then going into winter. And we had a burst of kind of adrenaline and morale where we had this real blitz spirit. We all pulled together. And then winter came on. And gradually we were all in our little silos working away, coming home so tired that I couldn't even talk for a couple of hours after I got home. And my husband, who's a hospital doctor, would say to, look, how hard can it be? It's only a couple of days and then it's the weekend. I'd be like, yeah, yeah, I can do this. And just increasing senses of dread going to work. And I just gradually had this feeling, well, hang on a minute. If my friend can become ill and die quite quickly, so can I. And are there ways that I can live my life that don't involve this level of stress and require this much of me? And by the time it came to the spring and we'd got through the winter, we'd got through our quaff season and targets, I realized that it was time for me to make a healthier decision for me, and I decided to leave my partnership. But that was after a period of quite a lot of discomfort, and it felt very shameful, and I felt if only I'd been a better doctor, if I'd worked harder, if I was more efficient, if I didn't waste time, I'd be getting home much earlier and not quite being so diminished by the job. Because when you're doing it, a lot of the time you're really enjoying it. You're seeing patients that you've had these amazing relationships with, that you've built up over years, and you're getting that positive feedback. But I'd come home and there would just be nothing left.
So it was the doctoring that was winning. Sarah the human wasn't winning.
Yeah. I think Sarah the human, the mum, the wife, the friend, the daughter, the sister,
Cat lover.
And at the time I also had some bees. I wouldn't say I loved the bees, but yeah, me as a human was not thriving, and it took a long time to work that out. One evening, it was dark in winter and it was sort of 7 o'clock at night, and I was going through these blood tests, the emails, and I got some email from NHS England saying, oh, people can have some coaching if you want. I thought, oh yeah, that sounds interesting. I'll put my details in. And I went through it and I thought, oh, they're looking for the burnt out doctors here. I thought, okay, well, I won't get it. I got it. I was one of 250 out of 3,000 who applied. And I thought, oh, does that mean I was at the lower end of, people who are coping? And I thought, no, okay, the penny didn't quite drop, but I had that burnout. And by the third session of coaching, I said, so I've decided I need to resign. She was like, where did this come from? But the thought process, I'd given myself that space. I think that can be the power of coaching, right? To give yourself that space to just think a little bit more broadly about what you need and what you're not getting, and what is taking away but not filling you up as much as you need it to. And also allowing yourself to be in spaces where you can thrive. And now my portfolio is completely different, and very little of it actually feels like work. And I'm probably working more hours than I was doing, but it feels very different. And I feel like I've got a different purpose, and yeah, I'm loving it.
What's the purpose at the moment? What's the number one purpose for you that really resonates with you?
I think it's the humanity, it's connecting with people on a deeper level, in an unhurried way, that's feeling just much less surface and rushed. And I've got lots of different roles. I'm a TPD, I'm an appraiser, I'm a GP mentor, I'm a coach, I'm a head of coaching, I do wellbeing talks. And all of those, for me, the thread is that it's supporting other people and people in wellbeing, and as doctors. And kind of the idea is that you're allowing them to be the best, truest, most real, connected version of themselves. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Having that time.
Yeah. And I think it's really easy to go into these career paths and kind of do what I did, try and get to the top, because that's the thing you're meant to do. At school, I was told, you can be anything. But you don't then go, yeah, but if you also want to be a present mum, a present wife, a present friend, have a life outside, be able to enjoy nature, you might not be able to do everything, or actually it might look different to the things that you have seen. There might be a really different and really interesting version of what you're doing. And that the creativity and the playful, the fun, the jokey side can come out in different ways. And I think I'm only really just beginning to expand and kind of breathe again a bit more and think about, who was that kid at school who would be, a bit of a joker, but also loved learning. I can be those both things. And I think you can squash yourself into these roles. And some people, they're really fantastic. They find that role and they bloom and they blossom and they grow and they expand. And I say, for me, that passion is helping people do that, I think.
Yeah, being allowed that space to be creative, which is what the special source is, because we are creative beings.
Absolutely.
And if you're given that space to create, then, there's nothing better than that, really.
Yeah, and that we are all creative. And I think you might be creative in how you dress, in how you decorate your house. You might be creative in the music you listen to or appreciate, or the views you look at, and the tone in which you're looking at nature. There are so many different ways, and I think we can all be a bit binary about things. And I do wonder whether school or university you're either a scientist or you're an artist. You're swotty and studious, or you're airy-fairy and not very predictable. There are these stereotypes that I think we can kind of believe and buy into the hype, and it's a load of nonsense, isn't it, really? And I think we run the danger of not allowing those sides to come out, also for feeling that if you do stuff, it has to be brilliant. There's this really kind of, I can only do things if it looks good, and if other people look at it, what might they think? I think that can be really crushing for people.
Yeah, I mean, it is very difficult when let's say that culture celebrates brilliance and perfection in every aspect of life. Whereas life is a learning process, and you've got to start as an idiot, really. And I think the more the more of a idiot you are, the better, because it means that you're learning. And also the pressure is off. And I think once the pressure is off, people start creating.
Oh, absolutely. And I think this whole feeling that we have to be this superhero and this absolutely shining example of this whole pillar of the community, the heroes that get clapped, for people in healthcare. That's a pressure, isn't it? It's invidious. It's invidious. You're told, but you can't possibly fail because you are then this persona. And you're like, well, what if I don't really feel like being that persona? What if I'm the person that is a bit chaotic and a bit whatever? I think there's a pressure externally and also internally. And I think social media can feed into that. You can see all these people, and of course we only put our best lives out there. And I think we should just put examples of where we've screwed up, or burnt your dinner, or been a really terrible mum. One of my sister's best friends put a brilliant photo on once, and it was all of them as a family, this shiny, beautiful family at this really cool festival. And I remember looking at that thinking, oh, that looks, I should do that. Oh, am I denying my children? And then she put this photo of them afterwards of her looking really cross and her children all crying. And she said, this is the truth. What you actually see from that photo is this 1 second. What you don't hear is the kids whinging, me bitching at my husband. It's been hot and unbearably, you can't breathe, we're all knackered, we're all hungry. And you just think this whole persona that you put on, the mask, and I think it's particularly true in healthcare, but I'm sure it's true in leadership roles, this feeling that you have to be perfect.
And it's even more important from old biddies like me, and obviously you're very young.
Thank you.
for the young ones to say, to look at and say, oh, this guy's actually lost the plot, or it hasn't got anything figured out, and maybe it's okay for me to kind of have a few hiccups and a few falls on the way.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be boring if it's a bit like that Aldous Huxley book, Brave New World, and you're allocated this role in life. Wouldn't it be boring if we all just did that? And I think I've done loads of things in my life. And I said to my husband, when lockdown came and we were all being a bit macabre, I said, if I carked it now, I would look back and go, I have lived a very full life. I have no regrets. I've done lots of traveling. I've worked abroad. I've tried different jobs. I've been to loads of places. I've read lots. I've seen lots of art. I've spent lots of time with my friends and family. I've had a lot of laughs. I've danced a lot. I've done really stupid things. I feel good about that.
What's the most stupid thing you've ever done, which you're willing to talk about?
Well, there are definitely a few that I definitely won't say, but one of them was skinny dipping in Lake Malawi. It was the first time I'd ever gone backpacking, and I left my money belt, because when you go traveling you have to have these belts that you fit under your clothes, and it had my passport, my visa, my traveler's checks, because you didn't really have credit cards. I'm not as young as all that. This was back in 96, and somebody came along and went, oh, well, thanks very much, what a nice little present for me, and walked off with all of my stuff. So, and I saw them do it, but I couldn't get out of Lake Malawi, in which I also caught bilharzia.
Yeah, I was going to say,
a few months later, which I caught bilharzia. So I came out of Lake Malawi with bilharzia, no money, no passport, not feeling very clever, and no real plan for how to sort that situation out. And there are many, many more, mostly related to unwise decisions while traveling. So it's that whole thing when your prefrontal cortex is still developing in your early 20s, and you make these decisions thinking, yeah, I'm going to be fine, like getting on a motorbike. And I've never ridden a motorbike before in my life, in Chiang Mai, the second biggest city in Thailand, at rush hour with a helmet that doesn't fit me, and think, of course I'm going to be fine. I'm going to go off motorbiking into the hills to look for some, what were they, waterfalls. And actually I was okay, apart from burning my leg on the exhaust pipe. But I look back now and shudder that my children might do stuff like that.
They've got to do it,
I know, and I don't want to know.
Yeah.
My dad said to me when I go away, he said, look, if you're going to do stuff like bungee jumping, skydiving, which I did, because he knew that I was a bit of an adrenaline junkie, he said, please don't tell me until after you've done it, because I just wouldn't cope. And I think that's a good policy.
Yeah, no, it is difficult. I mean, my son's 18, and yeah, he does some crazy stuff, and I just try and blank it out and be there for them, whenever it goes pear-shaped and when the shit hits the fan. What can you do?
My dad was good at that. I rang them when I had that money stolen. I rang them from Malawi on a payphone in floods of tears, and they were a bit like, what do you want me to do about it? I'm really sorry, but we literally can't help you in this situation. But I just needed to speak to them. And of course, everything ended up absolutely fine, apart from eating bread and water for a few days. My traveling companion not speaking to me for a while. But there was an example of total kindness. We ended up at the embassy I can't remember if it was Blantyre or Lilongwe, and the guard was there, and he shared his lunch with us because we were so hungry. But that was a moment of absolute human compassion. Yeah, I have never forgotten that, actually.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing what these, good human actions can do to us. You talked about writing letters, and just imagine the feelings that you give to other people from those letters, and
Well, there's good evidence behind that as well. I don't know if you've heard of positive psychology, and there's a lot of evidence behind doing this stuff, isn't it? That, people that do gratitudes every day are less depressed and anxious for 3 to 6 months if they're doing that. And certainly one of the things you can do is write a letter of thanks to people, and somebody that you haven't thanked face to face, write it, and then if you can read it out to them face to face.
Wow.
You get these huge changes in you, not just the person that you're thanking.
And this is something that the medical industry can learn from the coaching industry. Lots of positive psychology there, lots of psychological cues and aspects that is not very medical and not very peer reviewed and sort of what have you, but it has positive effects and affects on people.
Definitely. There's some good evidence for some of it. Certainly positive psychology, there's a lot of evidence for that. And then there's a lot of neuroscience that, if you start noticing things that you're grateful for in the day, you will carry on noticing stuff. Like when you're shopping for a car, you'll suddenly see that car everywhere on the roads. It changes your brain. The neuroplasticity changes your brain. And I think there's elements of coaching that help you look for your inner strengths, and you then look for that and go, okay, I've coped with this situation before. What strengths did I use then? Rather than thinking, well, that was all a bit cruddy, I hated that. You go, but I'm still here, aren't I? Okay, I've survived 100% of these situations. What were the things that I used to get me through that really awful time? Can I use that again? So it's recruiting that, those skills in yourself. Yeah, absolutely. There's more scope for it. It's not as, I think the more people that have coaching understand the benefit of it. And I think people that don't think it's a bit woo and a bit touchy-feely potentially. And there's that whole stigma that it's maybe associated with mental health, but certainly it's hugely powerful. And when I've had it, it's just been absolutely transformative for me, which is why I've gone on to do it. And I'm doing a coaching diploma and learning tons about it now as a part of my role. I think you'd be hard pushed to find an area of life that you couldn't potentially get gains from about it. I feel.
Yeah. And, I'm a fan of, having coaches who are non-medics as well. I think you can learn from everyone and everything, and also every age group. So, one shouldn't just stick with sort of doctor coaches.
Definitely. The two people I've had coaching from, neither of those are doctors, because I don't have to be an expert in your life to support you to have the space to explore what would help you thrive, bring you joy. What are the elements that are missing from your life, and how can you help find it? I don't need to know anything about you to do that.
Yeah. It's normally behaviors and habits and emotions and characteristics and personalities. Those are the sort of important aspects of what makes us up. And you don't really need to be a medic to understand these things.
No, you just have to be curious and a human. I think it's the humanity and the ability to, I think, just connect on that much deeper level and sit and be able to sit there and allow somebody to say or feel whatever they want to think, and say that's okay, and
work with it.
Yeah, there was a chap called Carl Rogers who talked about person-centered work, and it was all about unconditional positive regard. And that expression has stuck with me. I think anybody who has that from somebody else is going to grow.
Yeah. One of my first coaches actually, that was his main thing.
Okay.
Actually, it was interesting times for me during those times. Great. So if you want to contact you on a deeper level, what's the best way?
Yeah, well, my website is www.drsarahgoulding.com, and Goulding with a U, like Ellie Goulding, the pop star. And I'm at Dr. Sarah Goulding in Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Yeah, I don't use Twitter much, but I'm on most of them. Yeah, they can come and find me and just get in touch. Sure.
Cool. And what's this about bees and red slippers and?
Oh yeah, my shoes, my Be Happy shoes. Yeah, somebody sent them to me and they just brought me such joy. Yeah, I think I started beekeeping as an absolute episode in mindfulness, and watching how this unbelievably sophisticated organism works together blew my mind, and it completely reinvigorated my love of biology and nature, and just that on that microscopic level, they're just unbelievably complex and remarkable. So yeah, my Twitter page has got my shoes saying "Be happy."
With a picture of a bee, yeah, absolutely.
With a picture of bees on my shoes, yeah. I haven't completely styled out my house in bees because that would be a bit freakish, but I recommend beekeeping as a hobby.
Wow. It's been absolutely awesome, Sarah. Thank you so much today for being on the podcast.
It's been a delight, Haidar. Loved it.